Hey Team Edgar, what's up? Excited to be here with you on Thursday to talk about something that I haven't shared a lot about, which is the fact that I actually started out at Meet Edgar strictly in a customer support role. I absolutely love customer support when it comes to startups and tech companies, and I think there is a huge opportunity for people, especially those who might not have technical backgrounds or development or coding skills, to get into businesses that are in the online space. And with more and more stuff happening that's pushing businesses to pivot to be online services, if you're looking to get involved with a business that is going to be one that's a startup online and you don't have any tech skills, rest assured you can still have a really cool place in this company. So I'm going to share some lessons that I've learned over the last few years when I've worked in customer support before I transitioned more into a marketing role. And that is truly one of the coolest parts of being in a customer support role, is that you have a lot of touch points to every part of the business, and you're able to grow from that role into whatever your zone of genius reveals itself to be. So I'll share some slides here just with some tips that I've found really useful. And let me know in the comments below if you are in customer support or what's really resonating for you here today. So one of the things with customer support is that it truly is the touch point that you have with your customers. And I love this quote from the head of IBM's customer support team that says, "The last best experience anyone has anywhere becomes the minimum expectation for the experience they want everywhere." So if your team, your customer support team, can provide above and beyond service, that is going to be the level of service that customer expects from every other brand. It's this idea, if you've heard of the book Good to Great, it was super popular a few years ago, still holds true. Very good book. If you haven't read it, I do recommend it. But that's this idea that people don't talk about just good experiences when it comes to customer support with their friends. They talk about terrible experiences, or they talk about amazing experiences. So if you want to spread the word of mouth marketing when it comes to your brand through your customer support team, you have to offer up a level of exceptional experience. And we'll go into some ways that you can actually do this. So first and foremost, if you are going to join, or if you're on a customer support team that has to do with like providing someone a new service, or especially a SaaS company, a software company like Meet Edgar, there is a point that you need to understand called the emotional cycle of change. And this is when your customers initially sign up for a new product or for a new service, especially a new software, there's this point that's super high called uninformed optimism. They get a new tool that they're able to use, they get a new product that they're able to use, and their optimism is so high because they're thinking about the outcome of how much better their life is going to be once they put this product or service into use, right? So this uninformed optimism lasts, and they're super excited once they pay you. Then what quickly happens here, and you can see this dip of the red line underneath the mood here, is that it goes into informed pessimism. What this means is they realize the amount of time it's going to take in order to learn that product or service. They realize how much setup is going to be involved in the software, and they're not going to get the reward right away without doing that work. So our mood drops pretty quickly once we realize that, oh, right, I have to do a little bit of work before I can get the outcome that I want. Once they start doing the work, they'll be able to see a little bit of result from your product or service, and that's when this line starts to pick back up into something called informed optimism. So they're informed about what they have to do, they're seeing the results they want, and then comes the completion. So when people come right into your customer support team, especially those who have just purchased your product or service, keep in mind where they might be on this graph, not only to help inform the tone that you're writing to people in, but also to understand that someone might be coming across as really harsh or upset because they're in this informed pessimism stage. And it's your job as a customer support person to notice that and to make sure you get them a first win very quickly. So if they're writing in about a problem that might take some time to solve, think about what you can do to add into your response a quick win for them, because this momentum in getting someone a quick win will truly help take them and make sure that they're excited to continue using your product or continue to set up your service. So keep this in mind when people write in either angry or upset, what part they might be in here to inform your tone, as well as to make sure you're getting someone to that first quick win as quickly as possible to retain them as a customer. Next is reminding yourself, especially if you work in an inbox, that people writing in is good. So often I think that people want to hide their customer support email or hide their phone number. But if you are a true success story in customer support, you want to get someone to that first win quickly. So that's what we were just talking about. And in order to do that, you need people to write in. You want them to be successful. So if you're a manager of a customer support team especially, I would encourage you not to make things like, first response ticket time and stuff like that as valued as the fact that you want more tickets to come in. Make sure you get your email address out there. The more people write in, the more you can humanize your brand and really show that you outcare your competitors out there. Because truly, it comes down to this differentiator that right now, products and services have a lot of similar features. So what is going to be the differentiator between your brand and someone else? It could be your support team. It could be the fact that you have a really high touch process in order to make sure people are getting the most out of your product or service. This can even be a feature that you guys highlight on your features page or something in order to sway a user who might be a little bit nervous about purchasing this to realizing you are there to hold their hand, you are there to make sure they're taken care of, and that you're a company who is different from others who are just going to sell you something and say good luck. So have this mindset that you want people to write in. Once your marketing team has done the work to acquire that customer, it's your support team's job to get them that first win as quickly as possible. So setting up a really great self-help center is a good first step. Utilizing tools like YouTube in order to have like onboarding videos is an excellent step as well, because so many of your customers have probably had terrible experiences, like with cable companies when they call into support, that a lot of people are trained that they don't actually want to have a touch point with a support team because they know it's going to be a bad experience. But if you can give them self-help guides that are above and beyond to get them to that first win, that's the first good step. And also making sure that they feel comfortable knowing you want them to write in, which means having your email and your support number front and center. Props and bonus points if you can get like a little pop-up to come in if you're a software company, letting people know how to reach you upon initially logging into that new software. Additionally, I want you to remember when you're writing your tickets, so if you are someone who is deep in the inbox responding to customers, that our sensory nerves in our brain are coming from our eyes. 90% of those sensory nerves enter your brain from your eyes. And this means that people have a lot of cognitive load going on and a lot of vision related tiredness and fatigue throughout their day. So when you're actually responding to people, remember to put white space and paragraph breaks within your response. It makes sure that people feel like when they open your response to them, that they're going to be able to follow those steps rather than having one huge block of text. I know this seems like a simple tip, but truly scan it over and make sure it looks like they can just read a couple of sentences, go on to the next one. It makes the world of difference for the person reading that email. Next, I want you to remember that if you, especially you're a software company like we are here at Meet Edgar, that when you get funny emails, like this one here is one that I received that just said hi in it. That was the email, that was the chat that we got, just hi and then nothing else. So what do you do with this? Rather than just taking the time to say, hi, how can we help back? You can be proactive. You can log into their account and see where they are. For this example here, it actually ended up being one of their social media accounts was disconnected in our software. If I hadn't taken the time to log into the account, this exchange would have been back and forth maybe 3 or 4 more times. So if you get an email, no matter what the question or lack of question in this case is, please consider logging into every single account, whether it's your product-based service. You could log into like their shipping history, see what's going on, if you can find anything out with the tracking, stuff like that. Or if you're a software service, log in. I know it takes 2 extra minutes perhaps per ticket, but like I said, especially if you're a manager, don't make response time and don't make ticket count the most important variable that you're measuring success with, because oftentimes that's going to lead to people not delivering the level of service that your followers, or that your customers could truly want. So make sure you log into every account and don't put the emphasis on tickets solved, put the emphasis more on the happiness rating and getting people to actually solve that problem. Also, I want you to remember to look at tickets in the way that you need to find the real ask. So what this means is oftentimes people will write in and it seems like they're asking one question, but they really want an answer to a different one. I love this example here to explain this a little bit further. And that is that say you have someone's problem being that the elevator is too slow. So their complaint is this elevator is too slow. Stick with me here. I know it's a funny example. So a lot of the initial solutions that we could come up with to the fact that the elevator is too slow is, hey, let's make the elevator faster. We'll install a new lift. We'll upgrade the motor. We'll improve the algorithm. These are some pretty big fixes for just the elevator is too slow. If we reframe this problem and think about what are they really experiencing and what are they really going through, oftentimes we can take this to the step of saying, it's not that the elevator is too slow, it's that they're thinking the wait is annoying. So if we solve the problem in this way that we made the wait feel shorter by putting up mirrors. So often in hotels, you'll see those mirrors outside of elevators. This is one of the reasons, because they know your main problem here isn't necessarily that the elevator's slow, it's that annoyance that you're just standing there. So if you have a mirror there, people feel like they can do something. You can play music to make it a more agreeable atmosphere. You can install hand sanitizer so people, again, feel like they're doing something during this wait. Same deal goes for when people are writing into your support team. Take it a step further beyond what they're initially asking to find that real why. So at Meet Edgar, a lot of people will write in with just a simple kind of surface level problem. But if we dig a little bit deeper into what they're actually trying to solve by asking this question, we can offer better advice. So go through this process of making sure that you're asking what the real problem is. When you start to craft your actual response to them, I want you to remember that, of course, they're starting out with a problem, but your job as a customer support person is to start with empathy. So this doesn't mean necessarily saying sorry all the time. I actually tend to try to avoid saying sorry in the emails because that's kind of an admission of guilt. And oftentimes, this guilt aspect isn't something that's going to create a great conversation, right? So rather than saying so sorry or something like that, think about other terms you can use in order to make sure people feel heard. Some sort of things you can do here is reflect the language that they're using. So reflect the actual language they've used in their sorry, the doorbell just rang and it made me lose my train of thought. Reflect the actual language that they have used, and then make sure that you're going on an empathetic way. I'm so sorry about the dog there. Stick with me here, he'll stop in a minute. So when you actually start to craft, 1 minute, guys, I am so sorry about this. When you actually start to craft your status updates, you want to make sure that you're not burying the lead. So what this really means, oh my goodness, 1 minute, I am so sorry. I will be right back. Steady. Come on, no. Appreciate that. So when you actually start to craft that status update, you want to make sure that you open with what they asked for. So what they asked for is going to be the fact that they asked a question or they wanted a refund. If you want to then go on to explain a different concept, you're going to go ahead and make sure you explain the initial ask first. So the initial ask here is going to be whatever their problem is. So if they've asked for a refund, make sure you put that as the main thing. Then in the body, think about other things you can teach them, right? So answer their question here, then find a teachable moment. That teachable moment and extra emphasis is going to be a really cool thing for them to be able to experience. At the end, you're going to want to leave it with what we call the recency bias. So what the recency bias is it's this idea that people are going to remember the last thing that they read, the recency part. So make sure that you're not ending your email with something like a sorry. Make sure you're ending your email with something that is really strongly related to them feeling empowered to take their next step, because you want the person to take action. So again, don't bury the lead, answer their question right away. In the body is going to be a teachable moment. So what extra thing can you add there? The recency bias, you want to end it so they feel empowered to take that action. And that is a great structure to take when you're responding to someone's problem. And truly, people are driven by emotion more than anything. And you want to make sure that you're adding that emotional language into your I keep saying status updates, into your response when it comes to replying to customers. So when you're actually doing this, think about emotional words that you can really add in there. It goes to the same idea that when you're selling, you want to make sure you remember that people buy things more on emotional appeal than they do on logic. You're going to get people to take the steps you need them to take to be successful with your product or service if you add that emotional tie-in, if you can tell a story about what's going on. Same as we talk about in social media, add those into your status updates as well. All right, so I also recommend after you've done this, or if you're teaching like a new customer support person, or if you're learning customer support for the first time, that you remember your company values in every ticket you respond to. I know this sounds kind of funny, but brand touch points matter, and customer support is one of the ways you can get one of those brand touch points. So you want to make sure you do things like reread your ticket with your company values in mind. For example, here at Meet Edgar, some of our company values are kindness, ownership, and this idea of value for value. So when I'm looking to respond to someone in a customer support ticket, I want to make sure every response goes through the filters of our company values. So am I being kind to the person? Am I owning the issue? Am I taking ownership if it's our fault, if something went wrong? Or am I owning the issue in the fact that I'm actually making sure they're going to get their problem solved? Then I want to make sure that I'm providing them with an answer that's valuable for the amount of value they paid us. So that value for value makes sure that both the person who's purchased from us and myself have a equal relationship there. So what are your company values? And make sure you know your support team has this ability to go ahead and embody these within every ticket response that they put out there. Again, you want to make sure that your customer support team knows that the ability for people to reach out to you is their number one thing that they need to think about. I want you to remember that it is good when you get a lot of tickets writing in, because it gets you to get your brand voice out there even more. I want to share a few other bonus bits that really helped me become in love with customer service. One is that you really do get to be the bridge to the rest of your company. So being in customer support, you have to know what messages the marketing team is sending out, right? You have to know that the marketing team wants this email to go ahead and produce this action and these outcomes. If you can know that when people respond to that email, you know what they're supposed to do, and it's much easier to give a consistent response back. On the flip side, you get to be the bridge between people actually creating the product. So the developers, if you're a software company or whatever it is there, and you get to give them feedback for how people are actually using the features. So utilize your position in a really unique way to create bridges to other departments in your company and see yourself as empowered to do this. So if your company doesn't have this established already, I would absolutely recommend that you take initiative and go ahead and make sure that people know that you want to be a part of these discussions. One of the ways that I really love that Meet Edgar does our customer support is we actually have myself, who is actually part of the customer support and marketing team. We have Sarah, who's actually a part of the product team and does all of our QA testing. And we have Christina, who is an advocate and works with our higher level. Advocate is kind of like our C-level term at Meet Edgar. And we all are in the inbox answering questions. And this just makes sure the voice in the inbox, as well as the voice of our customers, gets back to the rest of the company well. So if you don't have something like that set up, feel empowered to bring this up to your company as an important part of making sure your brand voice shows up in the whole company. Also, when you're answering questions, take this idea of desire lines into effect, especially as you're a bridge between the support team and your product team. What desire lines are is this idea that if you are someone who, let's take an architect example, lays out a beautiful park with some sidewalks on it, and you go ahead and think it's a great layout, but no one ever tested this, and you see people not use the sidewalks. If you've been on a college campus, you see this all the time. People are going to take the most direct route, and that's going to be their desire to get there on that route, right? So same thing here. If they would have just laid the grass first and seen where that grass gets treaded and where people want to go, and then built the sidewalk would be way more useful. What is that in your product or your service that you can show the developers or the people who are making your product? You can show them the desire lines by seeing how people are using those products or features. So remember this when you're giving feedback. Desire lines are a great way to make sure that you are seeing the most traveled and the most utilized features, because oftentimes we'll build these in a vacuum, and that feedback can't get back unless you act as the bridge from those customer support tickets and the voice of your community back to the product team. So make sure your developers know how their product or how their features are being used. With this said, you want to avoid something that's called feature creep. So this is a term that's used a lot in software companies, and that's just that the complexity of your app or of your software has a cost, and that cost is typically the usability of it. So simpler softwares oftentimes have better outcomes here. And the way you can avoid feature creep is really making sure you keep up the dialogue with with the people writing in to your customer support team, to your product team. So when you pitch an idea, if you're getting a lot of feature requests, make sure that you're just not adding features in willy-nilly and without actually going through a process of asking, why is this feature important? How are we going to measure success if this is being used well by people? What behaviors do people need to take in order to have success with this feature that we're pitching? And make sure that you also understand that you as a customer support agent have to be empowered to know which features you're going to pitch. And you can also pitch to take away features, because feature creep and complexity of a piece of software truly is something that's going to make or break the people actually using it in order for them to be successful with it. So watch out for feature creep, and don't take it personally if those developers aren't adding in every single feature you're pitching and hearing about, because this is something that they take a lot of time to think about, is to make sure the features they're adding in isn't going to slow down the app, isn't going to make the flow confusing, and all of that. There's also something I like to think about when I respond to tickets called Hicks Law. Hicks Law says the time that it takes to complete a task increases with the number of options and known techniques to someone. So this is related to feature creep in the sense that if you want to get someone to that first win, that thing we were talking about at the very beginning, that's really important when someone initially buys your product or service and they get to that first win, the time it takes to complete that, if there are too many options for someone to do that, it's oftentimes going to lead them to just leaving the app, leaving the software, and not continuing along. So you need to educate people on the steps they can take to easily get to that first win. You might have other features and advanced features that they can use later on, but what is it that you can go ahead and utilize in your onboarding materials that will cut down on options and cut down on them thinking they have to get everything set up right away? Your main job when someone first initially enters your community is going to be to get them to that first win and then educate them on the other things that your product can do. I also want you to keep in mind when you're answering support tickets that you're always looking for a way to find the root cause rather than just putting a Band-Aid on the problem that people are writing in about. So problems don't have a single proximal cause, right? You want to make sure that you're taking it back and asking what the 5 whys are. So I'm sure you've heard this technique before of asking the 5 whys, but make sure you actually do it for some of the bigger problems. And you ask, why did this happen? And you step it back, because that will allow you to take this problem to the rest of your team and let people know how to actually fix it rather than just slapping a Band-Aid on it and saying, oh, just do this as a workaround. So as a customer support agent, especially at a software company, do this to be way more useful for your entire organization. There's also this cool idea called the IKEA Effect. I also lovingly like to call it the cake effect, and I'll tell you why in a second here. But when you're actually solving support tickets, there's a temptation in order to just say, you know what, I'm just going to log into their account and do it for them. But this is actually not going to be the best solution most of the time. And that's because people actually value things that they personally create just as much as if an expert created it. And that's that IKEA effect, right? So if someone actually created a beautiful piece of furniture, you might kind of value it, but if you took the time to have your blood, sweat, and tears with those little screws in there and created that furniture, oftentimes you'll value this even more. Same with your software. People are going to see your software or your product as something that's of more value in their life if they've actually built it. Why I call this the cake effect is because there's actually this cool story about the fact when cake mix first came out, all it was adding water to it. And people actually didn't love this. So the cake company started thinking it's because people didn't feel like they were taking the steps and had that emotional tie to that they actually made this cake. So now when you buy cake mixes and you have to put the oil, the water, and the egg in there, that's actually why, because studies and psychologists showed them that, hey, people are finding this too easy. That's why people aren't buying it. They want to go through the process of actually creating it themselves. So resist the temptation to actually go in and fix the problem for someone most of the time. There's going to be exceptions to this rule, of course, but empower people to actually do it for themselves. The level of people's contribution means the higher the valuation, but this only is true after the task is completed. So this comes to the importance of making sure you're step-by-step making how they're going to get from point A down to that completion level super simple for them to follow. So the more you can add like step 1, step 2, that kind of language in there, the better. All right. So I know that was kind of a quick overview of how you can take some cool some cool ideas in the design world and all of that and add them into the customer support side of things. But truly, it is one of my biggest passions, customer support, because that's where I started. I've been working in tech startups now for about 8 years, and customer support was one of the places that I started. So you, as someone who does not have any technical background, can absolutely start applying for these jobs. You know, if you're someone who perhaps has never worked remotely before, take these concepts that you've learned and actually write in a great cover letter to these companies if you're applying to these just customer support jobs about some of these concepts and about how you want to be a bridge from one place to another within a company, and really make sure that you're checking out their like values and mission statements when we were talking about that. Most companies have these listed like on their about page. You can go ahead and research this ahead of time. Make sure that you include these in your cover letter to show that well-researched area. And truly, it's one of my favorite parts of being able to still work in the customer support department and the marketing team here at Meet Edgar. All right. I apologize so sincerely for that little doorbell ring in the middle of this live stream, but you know, you do what you got to do when you're working remotely. Please let me know in the comments below if you have any other questions. I love talking about customer support, and I will be back with you tomorrow for another live stream. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and I hope you have a lovely Thursday night.